finally, the Sangha also progresses towards the final goal. So basically the Buddha has done everything, he has reached the Dharmakaya, the highest state, and the Sangha, they're actually progressing towards it. It's not the final state yet. Okay, so this, so only the Buddha who's endowed with the three bodies possesses the Dharmakaya, and okay, so same meaning. So what does the word jewel mean? Now the word jewel, or in Tibetan gunjok, like rare and foremost, it's from the term ratna, and there's an analogy here. I mean, that's just to generate faith. It's very poetic. Just on page 40 and 41. So their occurrence is rare, they're free from defilement, they have power, they're ornaments of the world, they're foremost. I don't think I need to read those. I mean, it's kind of like very devotional, like not difficult to understand, but they're saying why they're called jewel. Why do you use the word jewel, right? Ratna. So jewel has the connotation of a specific jewel. There's this mystical jewel called the wish-fulfilling jewel. Okay? So it's used again and again. Remember the 8 verses of mind training? Right? May all sentient beings see them, so enlightenment, to become enlightened for their sake, and see that enlightenment as a wish-fulfilling jewel. Which is like, what is a wish-fulfilling jewel? It's this mystical object where it existed. They think about that. Well, like a genie in a bottle, and they have that in other traditions, right? In the Arabic, right? In the Arabic tales, talk about a genie in a bottle. In the Sanskrit tradition, in the Indian tradition, in India, they talked about this wish-fulfilling jewel. But what is a wish-fulfilling jewel? It can not give you enlightenment. It can only give you material things. So anything material you wish, this wish-fulfilling jewel gives you. And oftentimes, certain aspects, bodhicitta for instance, is seen as a wish-fulfilling jewel because spiritually it gives you everything. Here the 3 jewels are compared to a wish-fulfilling jewel. That's why jewel, they're precious, as in like they can lead to the fulfillment of all our wishes. But here, of course, spiritual wishes. Okay? So it's used differently. And then there's reasons for why, and that's given here. It's free from defilement. It has the power, just as a wish-fulfilling jewel has the power to alleviate poverty, it has the power to eradicate our suffering, etc. So it's nothing difficult. And just as wish-fulfilling jewel is foremost among gems, the Buddha Dhamma Sangha is foremost among objects of refuge. So no, it's not difficult to understand. And the wish-fulfilling gem does not change through being praised or criticized. The 3 jewels don't be blah, blah. Okay, not hard to take, not difficult to understand. And then how one should take refuge. Again, from the depth of our heart, to entrust ourselves in the 3 jewels, to rely on the Dharma mainly out of fear, right? And then fear, it depends on Mahayana, it's the fear of cognitive obscuration in our own contingent, and fear of the cognitive obscurations of other sentient beings, or the obscurations and suffering of other sentient beings. Okay, so it definitely includes our own fear of that. Yeah. All right. This it possesses the quality of being all-inclusive as a future attainment. Yeah. So the Mahayana refuge is seen as superior, but of course only in relationship to becoming enlightened, etc. So that's the goal. So it's not to deprecate the Hinayana, not at all, but it's saying if you have the choice, the Mahayana would be of greater benefit to all sentient beings. So the refuge that's based on the Mahayana refuge, where your resultant state is mainly a Buddha, resultant and causal is both Buddhahood, the Dharma is the Mahayana Dharma, the Sangha would be the Mahayana Bodhisattvas, Arya Bodhisattvas, and of course your fear is that of obscurations, your own, and those of sentient beings. Okay. All right. Okay, that's it. So I don't think I need to read all this. It's just what it says in general meaning, but it's easy to understand. Then once you take refuge, you become a Buddhist. That's kind of the Buddhist idea. But that's like, people are afraid of being Buddhist. It's really bizarre. Like, I mean, becoming a Buddhist, it's not like there's something now implanted in you and you can't be anything else. That's how it may feel. You know, like, that's just a definition. So whether you're Buddhist or not, it's depending on your mind thinking I am or not, really, in the end. And that doesn't mean you cannot be anything else. You can be anything. I mean, but the definition that is given is usually like when you take refuge, then that's the definition for being a Buddhist practitioner versus a Buddhist philosopher. Being a Buddhist philosopher, you assert the 4 seals, 4 axioms, right? You're familiar with them? All contaminated, no. All conditioned phenomena are impermanent, all contaminated phenomena in the nature of suffering, all phenomena are empty and selfless, nirvana is peace. So when you accept that to be true, you're a Buddhist philosopher, you accept the basic ideas of Buddhist philosophy, and then of course differences of Vaibhashika, etc. And then with regard to Buddhist by practice, that would be if you take refuge. And in the Buddhist tradition, there's no ritual of taking refuge. I think that's like, you have rituals in other religions, like baptism. In Judaism, do you have a word for that? To become Jewish? Is there a word for that? Conversion? Pardon? You're born into it. Your mom is Jewish, right? No, but nowadays, I mean, traditionally, right? But nowadays you can convert to Buddhism, to Judaism.
You need to do a lot more.
Yeah, you need to prepare for that. A Jew can never, you can never say like, I excuse myself, I want to sign out. No, you can't.
Once you are born a Jew, you'll always be a Jew.
Doesn't matter how you're baptized.
Well, it depends on who you ask, I guess. I mean, in the end, it's just labeled. It's just a label, and it depends on human beings, basically, to label. So, with Buddhism, it's the same. That's just a label, and if as per convention, we decide a Buddhist is someone who takes refuge, well, that's what it is, right? In the end, it's not like intrinsically there's a Buddhist or not. So people want this ritual, but actually there's no ritual. I don't even think all Tibetans are Buddhist. I mean, I say we're Buddhist because my parents are Buddhist, but in that sense, in the strictest sense, unless they take refuge and just reciting the words. I mean, there's different degrees of taking refuge. If you just recite the words, but you don't know what the Dharma is, what the Buddha is, and what the Sangha is, actually, you're strictly speaking not Buddhist. But anyway, it doesn't matter because for me, I think it's just another label, you're Buddhist or not. Taking refuge, if it benefits you, you can be Jewish, Christian, whatever, and still, I don't know, I mean, yeah, you can be still. I don't know whether the Christians would agree with that. I don't know whether Jewish rabbis would they agree if you take refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, but from a Buddhist point of view, there's no problem, right? You can take refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha, just from the point of view of suffering in the next life. You can still take refuge in God. Pardon?
Not according to the text.
No. It says like, in order to attain liberation, you can still take refuge in the doctor.
Yeah. The fourth.
But I explained that. Remember? By the reason to acknowledge other refuges. Here it says, number 4, where did it say? By refusing this way to take refuge. There are 4 ways to take refuge. Right at the very end. Good qualities of the good qualities. The good qualities. The way to take refuge by knowing the distinction. I thought I went through it. Right? I said it. Oh yes. It is admissible to rely on worldly gods, spirits, and other beings to assist us with temporary objectives, just as we rely on and take refuge in physicians to treat it for a disease. It's only not to take refuge in order to become liberated. Right? So it should not contradict the 3 jewels. Of course, if we take refuge, if we take refuge in a teacher who tells us to kill other people, that we should avoid that kind of refuge. But a doctor is not going to tell us that. A doctor is going to tell us anything to stay healthy. A doctor is just in accordance with Buddhism, stay healthy to be able to work for the benefit of others. So one should not take ultimate refuge, and here the word ultimate again means something slightly different. So like totally rely onto on others for the purpose of attaining liberation or enlightenment. So to hope Jesus takes me to enlightenment or liberation. If that's where I want to go. But it sounds like it's forbidden and it's non-virtuous. No. If you want that, if you want to go to Elat, don't go north. It's kind of like saying that. You want to go to Elat? Don't go north. It won't take you to Elat. It's not like, if you want to go to Elat and you go north, you'll be condemned in hell. No. If you want to become liberated and enlightened, the way the Buddha set forth liberation and enlightenment, if that is, to my knowledge, not taught in Christianity, because the little I learned was not part of Christianity. I don't know about Judaism. You tell me. I don't know. If Judaism talks about liberation and enlightenment, sure, you could follow that. But if it's helpful on the path, okay, certain ideas, by all means, take refuge in it. But your actual focus should be on the teachings that take you there, right? That's it. It's about that. It's nothing more. And then later on, there's another section again where we talk about this again, where it says, do not take refuge in other objects. But it needs to be specified. Of course we can still take refuge, but not the kind of refuge where we rely on the Dharma in order to become liberated. Because what is the Dharma? We take refuge in the cessation of suffering, in the path that takes us there. So liberation is another way of saying cessation of afflictive emotions. So if you want to reach that state, right, we want to go to Elat. Don't go north if it doesn't teach you that. It doesn't teach you, that's it. So you can still take refuge in God, right? You can take refuge in God. In spirits, the Tibetans do all the time. The Ladakis have like 2 altars for Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha and for the local deities, celestial beings. Okay, right? And if there's an omnipotent God, it's of course not accepted. But still, if you take refuge, that's okay. From a Buddhist point of view, taking refuge in something that doesn't exist, but it doesn't harm you in your practice. But if you believe this God tells you to go out and kill people, then you have a problem. Or if you believe this God is telling you to, do animal sacrifices, you have a problem. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, becoming a Buddhist is just taking refuge. So, becoming a Buddhist, taking refuge. So people are like, oh, I do everything, but I'm not going to become a Buddhist. Like as if it was something scary. It's not like, it's just a label in the end that you take refuge, you already are, whether you think it or not. So it's just a convention that the Buddha himself set forth. So there's nothing scary about it. Which is fine, you don't have to become Buddhist. But in a way, a lot of people say, I'm not Buddhist. And when you talk to them, they're actually taking refuge. All right. Okay, now going back to this. So he concludes the presentation of taking refuge that there's this verse that it says, some are ruined by their wrong views. But of course, at the time when the Buddha was around, there were so many philosophical systems, spiritual systems. And some of them taught some beastly, black magic, harming others, learning spells. There were some negative spiritual systems that taught about animal sacrifices, killing animals that even exist nowadays, where they talk about, like in Nepal, they have this celebration where if you have a lot of money, you have to at least kill a goat. I think it's being banned by the government now, but my teacher, Gingetsulan, actually, he talked about it, because his family lives in Nepal. They're refugees from India, but they settled in Nepal. And Gela was there, and he said, it's terrible. The whole country is like, it's like everyone kills a goat or kills a bigger animal. And the poorest family, they kill an egg. They said that they can't afford it, so they just kill an egg. That's like the least bad. But they say it's terrible when you take Royal Nepal Airlines, because on that day they actually slaughter a chicken on the top runway, right? And they smear the plane with it. Someone told me it's kind of bizarre. Like they do this, yeah. So that's just terrible. You're killing all these animals. It's seen as a religion. So, I mean, I'm sure there's other aspects of the religions that is good, but killing that many animals from a Buddhist point of view, no, you're taking life, that's just harmful. Buddhists, they have this practice. They have this practice in the sense, some of the practices in Hinduism they take on, but they're symbolic. They made them symbolic. So when you see the dharmas, have you ever seen the dharmas? There are different dharmas. So there's one dharma that is round and red, and it's said to have the shape of a human heart. And it's red, right? It's the human heart. So it's just symbolic, as in like the human heart that is, afflicted by afflictive emotions. So it's symbolic. You make a symbolic offering in some of the tantric practices. But you don't actually, this is what it originally was, but they transformed that into a ritual cake. Yeah? So it's like the idea of like, you trample the afflictive emotions, which are like some kind of demon, and it's the heart of the demon. But it's only just symbolic. It's just the visual perception helps us to actually activate that. That's all. It's just psychologically, it can be helpful, visualizing that. But of course, it arises from within emptiness, and it symbolizes something specific. All right. Anyway, so that's what it says here. Just saying there are a lot of advantages to taking refuge. It's the usual. One becomes a Buddha, serves as the support for all the vows. Oh, if you want to take vows, you're taking refuge. To keep the vows, you take refuge. Because otherwise you can't keep the vows properly. Previous accumulated obstructive karma is purified. One accumulates great merit. One will not experience any obstacles caused by human or non-humans. Of course, you can still have. But it's said like when you have fear, taking refuge is a good measure to overcoming fear. Okay, so oftentimes the harm we receive from others is not the harm itself, it's the fear. It's the fear we experience. Like I said earlier on, we cannot remove our suffering as in like external calamities may still happen. Our fear should not be of fear of calamities. It should be fear of the suffering we experience as a result of that. Instead of seeing it as a challenge, as in like, an opportunity to get rid of all our stuff. We get really upset that someone ruined our stuff. This flood ruined everything. I mean, we can't help it. If we can change the situation, great. If we can't change it, well, why should we suffer if it's a matter of attitude? So to learn to see calamities also as something positive. Because inherently it's neither good nor bad. And everything in relation to one aspect can be seen as positive, in relation to another aspect can be seen as negative. So that's why actually here, not being harmed, it's a very good way to overcome fear. That's why we're said, if you have fear, to take refuge. Take refuge, okay? One is able to accomplish everything one wishes, well, in terms of happiness at least, not everything, and will not be reborn in the lower realms, or will eventually attain Buddhahood. Of course, only if you don't accumulate the causes for being reborn in the lower realms. Pardon? Page 44. I'm racing. Yes, I'm racing. The rest you can read on your own. Like I'm saying, it's nothing difficult to understand. This is not hard to understand. So I want to get to the debates, some of the debates at least. Yeah. So I'm jumping a little bit. If you have a question, you're welcome to say, I don't understand this. But I assume some of you said you read ahead, so I hope you did to a certain degree. And you can tell me if there's something you don't understand. But I believe this is really easy. I mean, I can't see. So Tsibi, if there's a question, please ask. Is there anything that's not clear? Pardon? I don't hear you. Can you speak up?
You already gave 45. This completed the presentation.
45? No. No, I didn't get it.
This completed the presentation of Refuge, and then you went back to the...
It's 43.
You got to look at the
Maybe I have different books. No, I've not gone back. I went to 11 and then came back. So actually now we're on page 44. So this is just the general meaning. Those are just and I thought I'd give you the whole thing. So I translated everything, but it's not necessary to talk about everything. So, Chand, am I not really loud? Okay, I'll just put it away a little bit. Does that work? Okay. It's okay? Alright, okay. So Chandrakirti said in the 70 verses on taking refuge, that the root of all our vows, so if you take vows, the root for those is taking refuge. So you need that as a basis. If you take any vow, it's always based because you take the vows in order to practice the Dharma. So unless you turn towards the Dharma, it's not effective. So vows. I'm going to say a little bit about vows, it comes later, but that's really interesting. The vows are very helpful. There's a difference. It's just, again, psychologically. It's the nature of our mind. It's like even in daily life. Do you talk in Judaism about the marriage vow? Do you call it a vow? A marriage vow? You call it that, yes. It's a kind of promise. But it's not just a promise, it's kind of a ritualized promise, if you like. So taking a vow, it's like in front of another person, at least the first time, you go through a kind of ritual and you make a promise, okay, to refrain from something. So when you get married, refrain from being with another person. You make the promise to be with that person until death do you part, or whatever, until death parts you, or good times, bad times, whatever. So that's a kind of vow as well. And then likewise, when you take vows like to not engage in the 10 non-virtues. Now there's this suggestion, you can take one-day vows. Okay, there's like a whole list of vows, one-day vows, there are 8 of them. Now we usually associate them with the Mahayana precepts, but they are the same vows. If the motivation is self-liberation, they become pratimoksha vow. Pratimoksha. Moksha means liberation, prati means own liberation. So they're usually taken, those vows are taken not with the Mahayana, don't require the Mahayana motivation. It's good to take them with that motivation, but it's not necessary. They form the basis. That's what the Hinayana Mahayana traditions have in common, those vows. Okay, so the Theravada tradition and the Nalanda tradition, they have those two in common. Now, with regard to those vows, you can take vows for one day. Why would you take a vow if you just refrain from it anyway? Well, it's said to be more virtuous. It's more effective and more virtuous. So if you make a promise not to do something, right? Like when you get married and you make a promise before God to be unfaithful, not to be unfaithful, to be faithful, right? You're more likely to do it because you made a promise in front of someone, so that keeps you, remembers you. You remember that. Is this going down again? Okay. Remember that. In terms of, it keeps you, it enables you to hold it. But it's also said to be, if it's a virtuous, and of course being faithful is something virtuous, there's more virtue behind it. It's more virtuous. So making that promise. So if you feel like you can't take a vow, well, try it for a day. And one of my teachers, he said, even without taking the vow, you could make a promise to yourself or to the Buddhas. It's not that official kind of taking the vow in that kind of ritualized way, but just making a promise. All day long, I will try my best not to get angry. It's said to be great virtue if you do that. Or I won't kill. You know you're not going to kill, but setting your mind to not do it, it's more virtuous than not setting your mind in that way. Yeah, so it's encouraged to at least take a vow for a day. Big deal. For one day, we can all manage it. So we feel, and we may think vows restrict us. You may think vows restrict you. It's all relative. For one person, a vow is a restriction. For another person, it's a liberation. It's liberating. How is this liberating? Well, if you have taken a vow to keep your hair in that way, I don't have to make a choice about my haircut. It's that or nothing. So it's liberating because I don't have to choose. If I have a vow to be celibate, I don't have to choose a partner. It's no partner altogether. So I don't have to make that choice. You see, there's a lot of times when we're, do I not? But it's liberating in the sense that certain aspects that take up my time, right? Of course, if I really want them desperately, then the vow is not liberating, it's restricting. And then we shouldn't take it. But as long as you don't really want to do it, but you would do it without the vow, you take the vow. Okay? So it gives you more freedom. Right? So it's anything like a diet in a way, right? You follow a certain diet, you're not going to eat anything else. You've made that decision and it gives you a certain freedom to not make this choice. Blah, blah. Okay. So the vows should not be seen as a restriction. It's only in relation to your state of mind. And therefore, to accumulate a lot of virtue, you could just say the 5-day vows, or a layman's vow, or laywoman's vow. So there's a whole list.
What is layman or
Laywoman, a nun is not a layperson. Layperson means a non-ordained person. So someone who is a monk or nun is not a layperson. A layperson, I guess it comes from Christianity, right? Like a non...
It's a very old-fashioned Christian way of describing people who are not practicing.
Right. Do you have a Hebrew word for that?
It's like secular, but it's not really secular.
No, it's not secular, because you can... It just means someone who's not a monk or nun. Or someone who's not a monk, who's not taken...
There's no monks and nuns in Judaism.
No, I know, right? But...
Everybody's like
yeah, everybody's a lay person, yes, exactly. Or non-rabbi, maybe a non-rabbi.
rabbis have blessings.
Yeah, but monks and nuns, like in Christianity, like a priest, I don't know whether they would call a Protestant priest, would they call that person a lay person? So an ordained priest or ordained pastor. Like in Germany, when you're Protestant, you can get married. But I'm not sure they would be called lay. In German, at least, I'm not sure would they be called. No, a priest, although they have family, they're ordained. They're not lay. Right? So, and also, I mean, in Japan, monks and nuns are not lay, but they still have family. So that's seen as degenerate, to be honest. But anyway. So let's put it this way. If you're celibate, because you can even be a lay person and be celibate. You can take the 5 layman's vow or laywoman's vow, and instead of refraining from sexual misconduct, you refrain from sexual conduct altogether. So, yeah, you can. So being celibate, also if you're celibate, you're not necessarily a monk or nun. A monk or nun is celibate for sure, but also commits to wearing a certain outfit, commits to a certain haircut, and refrains from eating in the evening, which I don't, Venerable does, or refraining from dancing and making music with desire, attachment, etc. That's not part of the lay vows. So lay person's vow can be celibate, but they don't have the vows of refraining from listening to music with attachment, etc. None of those vows apply to them. They have only 5. Refraining from intoxicants is the same: killing, stealing, sexual conduct or sexual misconduct, and killing, stealing, lying. That is lying about pretending to have realizations that you don't have. So it's not like if you lie a little bit, you don't necessarily break the vow. Yeah. So there are those 5. Okay, killing, stealing, sexual conduct or misconduct, lying, and intoxicants. Not taking intoxicants.
I protest against the difference between 7 and 8.
I was wondering this morning, would it come up or can I just go through them? I was literally thinking, will they notice?
Actually, more vows you have to do. We have yoga. So that's fully.
didn't notice.